Okay, I don't like doing follow-up so much, but I do like corroboration and vindication somewhat, and showing you the truth as it comes out and reveals itself. And sometimes I get to add on to other videos that I've shown. And with this one, I'm going to be able to tie three different ones together with a couple that I did last year, if y'all have been with me. This is a site that's been out by Forbes. Impact crater discovered in the Sahara may solve mystery of King Tut gemstone. It's done by David Brisnan, and I like his little moniker ad mark here. He says, "I deal with the rocky road to our modern understanding of Earth." And he's a geologist. Well, whenever we were looking at this desert glass, Libyan desert glass, that King Tut used for his necklace that I did a couple of videos about, we weren't able to make a correlation on where this exactly was. And I described how whenever I played D&D, though, this anomaly was already known. And from that idea, and having another module that talked about in Icelandic areas, lakes frozen over, and they were using ships but would put them up on skis or on ice skates, basically, giant blades, gigantic blades of the, Atlanteans or whatever, or Titans, if you want to say that they look like. A little curved up in the front so they don't dig in and all that stuff. And then people were using this to traverse back and forth across this sea. And we had to do so in the module type thing, but I used it in a module about Egypt, and they were sailors on the Sea of Glass. And it was pretty neat. I thought it was one of the neatest things that I'd come up with, and really I didn't, come up with it, but evolved it, if you will, into whatever it was. Now, this crater that's found here is looking just like Arizona crater, the famous Arizona crater we see out there, but it's a little more than half its size. That's all that it is. But by saying all that it is doesn't say everything to it. Tell you what, after looking at this real quick, what I think, and then we'll go into it. But I think that this conglomerate meteorite made of iron was headed down to Earth, and it split due to coming through all the pressure waves of Earth. We'll talk about this again later. And eventually, picture like a dive bomber kind of guy, where it came down, strafing the Earth, if you will, and dropped something off, and then exploded out here. And so what you have is this crater, which is a verifier, and the Sea of Glass beyond, which isn't necessarily created by this, but as it reached the closer and closer to sea level and more pressure waves, it eventually couldn't handle it anymore. Part of it dropped off, boom, and started falling. The other carried on past it some 40-50 miles and exploded. In the air is an air burst and didn't leave a crater. And they've always said, well, there might be a crater below all this, but there's sand now and everything. Well, the Sahara used to be green somewhat, but if we look at this, we can tell that it hasn't covered in with sand at all. And the weird thing about this is you see these eroded marks here and stuff, but they're saying that the lumpity thing that you see around this, which given not too much longer and a couple of sandstorms, would have been covered into the point that you probably would not recognize it, and then it would be swallowed up by the Sahara and you wouldn't know about it ever, perhaps. But this right here in the rim has been shown to heat it up to around 3,600 degrees and solid, like it's in your oven on broil, and sits there for long enough to get to that point. But it happened rapidly, right? Pow! But so much kinetic energy was in here that it heated up the entire land to that. And these little moa that you see here are actually where the glass, due to gravity, was melting back into the cliffs of the crater. So you can picture almost like a volcano, and it burped up and then stopped, and you can see that magma as it's cooling kind of, and it has somewhat of that appearance, which is neat. Let's go ahead and get into this. He tells you it's a previously unknown crater, likely of extraterrestrial origin, and was discovered in the Sahara Desert, 2020. This was done off of using satellite images and Google Earth type of things, and I wish it showed a map for just, I don't know, 40 kilometers, 60 kilometers or so. The Nile is over here, just to the east. And from this crater, if we go out east northeast a little bit, there's your Libyan glass that's there, and so it would kind of be able to pinpoint it in some ways. And they noted that there's a few trails running down into this thing. Like there's one right there. It comes down in there. I can't stay on the line of it, guys. But it looked like some people have been there in the past. So let's get in this. As analyzing satellite images showing the terrain between the village of Karet and Had el Bahr and Karet el Alafa in Egypt, an international research team discovered what seems to be a previously unknown crater in the midst of the Sahara Desert. The supposed crater, tentatively named El Bahr crater, is approximately 327 meters or 1,073 feet across, with an outer 1,027 meter rim. The shape resembles a typical impact crater like the famous Meteor crater in Arizona. The researchers also found chemical traces supporting the idea that this landform was formed by a high energy impact event depending on mineral content. Rocks absorb or reflect different wavelengths of light. Using satellite images created by combining various wavelengths of light, the researchers identified a high concentration of orthopyroxene in the basalt rocks of the crater, and while the surrounding rocks show a low concentration of any of this mineral. So it's like, well, there's a ring right here of this mineral. This observation suggests that the rocks were melted and then slowly cooled, forming large crystals of orthopyroxene, which is a quartz type mineral. Discovery of El Bahr crater could also solve an old archaeological mystery. Now we're going to go into the three different things here. And in 1922, entering the intact tomb of Tutankhamun, British archaeologist Howard Carter famously discovered a breastplate and everything else. But this breastplate was decorated with gold, silver, and various jewels and a strange gemstone, a lot of faience and things like that. That strange gemstone in the center of the scarab. Carter identified the gemstone first as chalcedony. It's a common variety of the mineral quartz, kind of like topaz or this type of thing. But in 1932, British geographer Patrick Clayton was exploring the Great Sand Sea along the border of modern Egypt and Libya. Here he discovered some strange pieces of a greenish-yellow material of unknown origin, resembling Tutankhamun's gemstone. The Lybian Desert silica glass, as the mineral is now called, consists of almost pure silicon dioxide, like quartz, but its quartz structure is different. It also contains traces of unusual elements like iron, nickel, chromium, cobalt, and iridium. And that's the little playbook of a meteor, definitely. Here's a piece of it right here. Lybian Desert glass, impact dust found in there, and that's a pretty good chunk of it or whatever. Some are opaque-ish and some are more see-through. It is among the rarest of minerals on Earth. It is only found in the Great Sand Sea, north of the Kilf Kebir Plateau, one of the more remote and desert areas in the Sahara. The origin of the desert glass has long eluded geologists, but some suggest a volcanic origin. Others propose that the fragments found in the desert are tektites, solidified impact debris of meteorite exploding and melting the vast sand deposits of the Sahara, like I was saying. However, no impact crater was ever associated with the Lybian Desert glass was ever confirmed until now. The researchers now hope to send an expedition to El Bahr crater, confirm its extraterrestrial origin, and might be also find out a connection between the impact and King Tut's unique gemstone. So let's look at another article that's on here. And so we know that King Tut's gemstone, and y'all are familiar with it, probably from the videos I've done. But we've also, you're not going to let me go to it? God, I'm starting to hate this thing. Wow, yeah, it lost connection. I'm probably not going to edit it out. We'll just go back here. So, Howard Carter found that, but he found more interesting things too. There's quite a few ooh parts, and the biggest standout one is King Tut's dagger, for it's been found to have meteoritic iron in it also. And if you'll remember, and the end of last year, they also found a tell that was out in the Jordanish area that was seeping out orange and looked kind of odd on a satellite photo. And by doing so, they figured out this place was worth excavating. In excavating it, they found that it was an iron work shark and had slag all around it and everything else, right? So, really, just to be straight up with it here, during my lifetime, that Iron Age sure has changed its tune. Why do I have this banner that's stuck? Didn't do this on the last one when I cleared it. Oh my God. There we go. On November 4th, 1922, a boy accidentally stumbled on a stone that turned out to be the top of a flight of steps cut into the bedrock in the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of Kings is a remote valley located in the desert west of the Nile Valley. In pharaonic Egypt, this valley is considered the land of the dead, and many pharaohs were buried here. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter was searching there for the tomb of King Tutankhamun, or anything really. A relatively minor pharaoh, though, that was spoken of, related to Akhenaten, who had been kicked out, right? And are deposed, and they'd changed their ways back to their ways and so on during the great 18th dynasty that we all know about. He was a minor pharaoh, ruled over Egypt from 1332 to 1323. Short time, boy king. 1 month later, Carter entered the pharaoh's tomb, asked if he could see anything in the burial chamber, and Carter allegedly responded, yes. Wonderful things. Tutankhamun's tomb was filled with statues made of ivory, precious jewelry, and even a complete golden chariot. Recently we looked at some pictures that I just did of it that have been colorized, and it gives you a better idea of what you're looking at. In one treasure chest, Carter discovered a large breastplate decorated with gold, silver, and various precious jewels, and a strange gemstone. The breastplate shows the god Ra as a winged scarab made from the yellow translucent gemstone, carrying the celestial bark with the sun and the moon into the sky. And so you can see where they took that raid up through the heavens, and the celestial idea was that they were to take the Nile but then hook up onto the Milky Way and take the ride around the Milky Way and come back up with it again. And then coming forth by day was the rebirth situation. You can see the moon here, the two snakes, and this is another representation of the sacred boat traveling with the blue eye of Horus, the scarab itself, and that weird translucent glass gemstone that's been well cut to fit perfectly in there. But look at all this little faience pieces and everything that are all in here. It's only missing a few pieces. But so he identified it as quartz, but 10 years later that other guy said, well, this is the same as this stuff right here, and he discovered strange glass in the sand, and they figured out that it's the same stuff. 2 years later, he published a short note suggesting that pieces of Lybian Desert glass were quartz-rich deposits of dry lake. In 1998, Italian mineralogist Vincenzo Michel analyzed the optical properties of the gemstone in King Tut's breastplate and confirmed that it was indeed a piece of LDG, or Lybian Desert glass. And here's another piece of it that you can see that would probably be very much similar to that. This is more translucent than the other piece. And let's see if there's anything here. The origin remains uncertain, but it looks like because they didn't have a crater, that's why they say that it remains uncertain. Well, now that we've got a crater, they can say, well, it's certain, but the problem is the crater didn't create the glass right around it. The glass is on past it in an area. So all it did was travel along, it just dropped off a piece and went pa, and then this went boo and made the glass, right? They say that the glass was formed, though, 28 to 26 million years ago when an impact melted the coarse, rich sand of the desert. The unusual elements found in the LDG are explained as traces of the vaporized meteorite. And so here we can see a piece of tektite from China, and it's got little dents all in it and stuff, and that's where it's melting in ablation whenever it goes through the story. So they're not certain on it. It seems like the glass dated to a well old age, and if they can put these two together, and they're trained, no. But then some geologists are turning around saying, you're taking where they incorporated this aged material into a glass, and now you're saying it's all created then. But whenever it aged, it took in 26 million year old material, but is that flashpoint 26 million years old? It doesn't look like it can be. It's not totally covered with even desert right now, like this layer that's right here. And I'm just not going to totally go against it or anything that's like that, you know. But this is a strange piece, though, and it remains the only known example of where an Egyptian artist used the mysterious material. And that was pretty neat to find that out, but surely they've used some more, or somebody's going to find some other pieces of that, like they have found amber in the Egyptians, like they have found Egyptian faience beads all the way up in Denmark and even in the Philippines and stuff, which we've talked about in the last year. So this is off Live Science, and this is one where I did the article about King Tut's dagger. For he's got this well-made dagger that just blows everything away, and this one looks like crap. But in reality, this one has a glass hilt that's set in with pins, and the blade of it is made out of meteorite iron. And they talked about how it might have been a gift from the Amani and the Hittians and things like that. And people think that now because they're shown up to have expanded that Iron Age, and they heralded it in. Looks like they herald in just about every metallic age, but that's kind of the people that became the Hattusians and the Mitanni and the people that we know of throughout there. So this is real neat. Let's see if they show anything else of it. And you know, measuring meteorite iron, this is the same picture I used and stuff. So this is where they measure the amounts of nickel and cadmium and everything in the iron, and they were trying to figure out just which one iron meteorite hit, and they thought they had it when they had this one that had landed up in Ethiopia, but it doesn't match its signature or whatever. And I'm really wondering if this one matches its signature. The one other reason they thought his blade was something strange is some of these blades have some iconography that doesn't look very Egyptian on it, right? And there are mentions of gifts that were given of iron, and where they talk about it being from the gods and from space. Now let's try to tie this together a little bit more if we can. You're gonna go to it? My God, I can't believe it's double locking up that quick, and I reset it. Yeah, it just lost connection here. Here we go again. Really ruining the video here. Man, it won't even reach. There it goes. We'll let it go a few seconds here. Give me that. So interestingly, some people that have studied the hieroglyphics quite a bit have found strange phrases. And kind of like that Shepherd Kings and a few other things we talk about, it's strange how the iconography or the pictographs used kind of mean something also. And what they're finding, well, let's just see if I can get to this article here. And I'll show you what they're finding. You're going to do this crap to me? Stop it. Amazing, I can do the same thing I wanted to do before, but I couldn't do it. Yeah, when it's loading all these. And the problem is I've got 50 panels here pulled up at least for all kinds of stories, guys. So I'm trying to get to them. And this is one that shows up out of the in-between. While I was trying to pull up all my articles, I find that CFAP's had one on the thing too. Be interesting to take a look at that and see if he's got anything different to add to it. Him and I seem to be crossing the same roads quite a bit, quite often. And at first I thought he was doing the old pyramids that people didn't know anything about and ancient Indian burial grounds, but he seems to be going all over the place. So let's take a look here if we can get, look how far I have to go to get down to where I was. Giraffe culture. No, I'm still not there, guys. Wow. Ostrich egg vessel. I was going to put that out right after the last ostrich egg one, and I haven't got to it. Brr, brr, brr. Oh my God, look at us go over here. Hey, crystal eyes of the blue Egyptians. Earliest Egyptians and stuff, scribes, and they had these crystal blue eyes. They're not made out of that same crystal like that, but that's just wicked, isn't it? And all the earliest dynasties. But that was just a stopover. Let's go ahead and go on down here. And do one more stopover. Yeah, this loading up things like this is going to ruin it for me, isn't it? So here's the great grandfather of King Tutankhamun. This is Yuya. He's blonde headed, and you can tell he has this look about him. Looks almost like Abraham Lincoln, I've always said, especially in a black and white photograph, because they're always in black and white. But so is his wife Yuya. People have often said that that's Joseph. Oh, that's just a look around. Bridget, I've got to do that one on the Celts. Oh my gosh. So, can we finally get to it? Well, this is where it kind of gets a little important. And I've shown this symbology here recently, where in the Book of the Dead, they'll show 28 different points that are all the way down this coil of Apep going with the moon and so on like that. And I'll probably throw that one out along with this somewhat. But ancient Egyptians believed the sky was a cosmic ocean and that you could sail across, and an iron orb that dropped meteorites on us. And I've heard somebody use a little bit of this and turn around and make it an Ancient Aliens, because they are sailing, and whenever you're in Star Trek, they act like it's a ship. Well, it is a ship. And all of that mess, right? So, what truth do they have in it? Well, whenever they died, they were going to go across the Milky Way in the ship and everything, and blah, blah, blah. And this is Geb holding up the sky, and y'all have seen the girl that's kind of built like this, bending up over things. And there are statements that say things like, she lost an earring. And what the hell has that got to do? Okay, well, that might be a meteor. Earrings of Geb. But there's a lot more. So it sounds like a phenomenon that would have happened in some bizarre alternate universe. You would stare up into a cosmic bowl of iron, which sometimes cracked and sent shards of itself hurling to earth. But this is how the ancient Egyptians saw the sky, among other things. It was a great bowl of iron holding up an otherworldly ocean that the dead would sail across to reach the afterlife. Now, you think that's strange right now, don't you? But if you look in the Bible, it says that hammered metal, like tin, but they couldn't describe it, whoa, is what the dome over the earth is, and they described it as being looking like a snow globe. and the four corners of the earth and so on. But I'm telling you, people before that thing was written already knew the world was round, and some of them even knew the distance of the moon and the size of the sun and all kinds of neat things. But if you want a hammered bracelet or a hammered metal dome, but occasionally a piece would crack off. This is the belief. And so this caused a falling star. Egyptologist and Brown University PhD candidate Victoria Almasa Villantoro, who recently published a story on the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology, has a new insight into the N41 sign, the half-circle hieroglyph that repeats itself several times above. And half-circle, is this into it and a sign of Geb, or is it other signs that are showing itself that she's saying is, oh, the bowl sign that's quite often seen in the horizon and this, that, and the other, but there's another bowl sign, right? This hieroglyph was associated with iron, water, and women. But what does it tell us about meteor showers and beliefs? Well, in pyramid text, the image of the sky as an iron container of water that was also associated with the sky goddess Nut and her womb resulted on the sign being used for metals such as iron, womanhood such as uterus, or water such as well. And I've told you 2 times now I could do a whole thing about wells, and if we look at the couple of mentions that I've had so far, it doesn't take much more where you can go look at all these things about wells and magic wells and wishing wells. And a well's water, but you look down and you can see a reflection, and so people looked in wells a lot of times for things. Ancient Egypt was a culture full of iconicity and symbology. It is clear from a writing system, but it's also the magical principles of Egyptian art for which an image could be as effective and as real as the ideal that it represented. Before the advent of smelting in the Iron Age, iron only appeared in meteorites that had fallen from above. Do you know you can get iron out of blood? Do you know you can collect enough iron out of blood and you end up making a weapon out of it? Whoa. Before the advent of smelting, though, those meteorites were there, and its heavenly origins made it sacred to most Egyptians. King Tutankhamun was buried with weapons made of meteoritic iron and a headrest. Egyptian hieroglyphs, because this is from the gods, and so he's fixing to go see them, so they gave him a dagger, a headrest for his sleep into the afterlife. And Egyptian hieroglyphs often have multiple meanings, though. So the triple oscillation with what they call N41 symbol is not unusual. Almanza Vittoria was able to shed new light on its meaning after analyzing and interpreting the pyramid text. These 4,300-year-old carvings in the inner walls of the pyramids, which were also the oldest known religious texts in the world, were spells meant to guide dead kings and queens to the afterlife. First time they put it on the walls was King Yunus back in the old dynasty and stuff, and I've shown a picture of that recently in reference. But the pyramid texts continuously refer to the opening of the iron by calling its name Jah and its separation from the sky, she said. It's clearly a metaphor for the opening of the primal egg, which the king needs to break in order to reverse the natural order, birth, death, and be reborn. The sky is an iron container, but it also is Nut's womb and an egg. And a split egg takes an oval shape that resembles the N41 design. Like a container, it had a recurrent association between opening and regeneration in creation, such as the opening of the mouth ceremony or the primeval separation between the earth and the sky. And they'd actually open their eyes and their mouth, and the people say that's tools were always made special too, and there might have been one made out of iron that they used for it to help with this situation. The opening of the mouth was a death ritual conducted by a priest wearing a mask of the jackal-headed embalming god Anubis, and we've talked about that a few times here recently, and the hellhounds of death. But he would touch the mouth and eyes of the mummy with Najeru blades that would enable the dead to see and eat and drink again in the afterlife. While many of these were found were obsidian, some were made of meteoritic iron, oh snap, which was used for luxury or ceremonial items. The priest designed as the opener of the mouth also lived in the city of Letopolis, which was represented by the thunderbolt of the god Seth, and thought to be a site of the ancient meteor showers. So this has to do with that Seth Purism and things, and the yin and yang of the world and everything. Egypt is thought to have been hit by at least one meteorite in the last 5,000 years, so it would make sense that if it was celestial iron that was found. Of course, this is separate and unaware of the recent find and so on, and may not be aware of the second one that was found in Ethiopia. But after death, the pharaoh or queen was believed to have sailed across the sea in the sky, this sea of glass, which explains, but it's a sea of iron. It's a metal dome holding up the cosmic ocean. And so in the Bible, whenever they talk about there being sea out in space, and you go, that's stupid, we know it, and they, oh yeah, well, there's supposed to be vents. They open up vents, and the vents of heaven allowed this water and this flood to happen that they talked about. And they construe the Sumerian flood with the ancient one, the Younger Dryas, it appears. For if somebody was to let open a little hole and something came from outer space, boom, and that might have been a different take on that whole event. Seems like it. So she sailed across the sea, which explains the elaborate boats found in some of the pharaoh's tombs, and break the iron door to the realm of the gods. You can actually hear a modern interpretation of this journey in the Night Wish song, The Pharaoh Sails to Orion. You can also see it in the Sails of Charon, in an ancient Scorpions tune that I played for you last year, and it talks about this same type of deal, and blind man. Anyhow, the ocean sky was also the womb of Nut, and she's the goddess of the Milky Way, which the deceased would be reborn in other gods who were associated with the metal that Egyptians viewed as mystical. Most explicit is the association of iron and Seth. Seth was the other child that was born out of the Bible. Cain slew Abel, got banished, and then they had Seth, which they believed was a replacement for Abel that God had given him himself. Oh, I'm not going to get off into it, but Sokar is a metalworking god who sails the sky on a boat with an iron prow. That's what it says. Well, that's a metaphor for a comet in the sky and a meteor, and obviously Nut, since she is the sky itself, and Jah is nothing but her womb, explained Vittorio. Osiris is the deceased and transfigured king, just like Horus is the living king. The actual pharaoh that owned the pyramid text is commonly referred to as Osiris plus the name of the pharaoh. Right? You see this? Said Osiris. The Osiris king was to ascend the sky and become eternal like the imperishable stars, the circumpolar stars of the northern sky that do not set below the horizon. And we've talked about this before, and how in the ancient belief, even in the Hebrews, if you will, whenever you died, if you were good enough, you became a star in the sky like the saints and the angels are. Right? So this just correlating like hell. The ancient Egyptians had a complex and somewhat kaleidoscopic way of seeing both their divine pantheon and reality. This is also how this highly advanced civilization approached the universe itself and cosmos, and religious beliefs often merged with actual science of the time. The sky was not just Nut's womb, but an iron vessel, but a cosmic ocean that the sun was ferried across every day, was the matrix of the cosmos. Their astronomical knowledge was vast enough that they used it to build certain monuments precisely enough to align with the cosmos. When the Sphinx was built, it was intentionally positioned to have the sun rise and set over its shoulder. The Egyptians were also apparently into something with their vision of iron in the sky. The iron container is a cosmology represented in the pyramid text, which is a religious document and thus only a partial truth. Now, the fact that they recognize that the sky is at least partially made of iron is a huge scientific achievement, but it means that they knew that something above the earth contained iron and that they would get stuff from the cosmos, and they would say, by the gods. And these special weapons that you hear about sometimes in old days that were made by the gods, and mithril, and these dwarven hammersmiths, and all these things going on might lead credence to that too. Just to try to fathom all of this the next time you're stargazing up in the sky and see if you would come up with those ideas. Well, after you saw a meteor and then figured out where it landed and you figured out it was from this rock and so on, you might be able to do something like that. 2,600 human brains so well preserved could almost be a horror movie prop. Well, so that kind of ends it for me, though, but that's, again, just another beginning there. And so this bowl idea and this iron thing that goes along with this boat, that if you look, it has the little bowly green iron belly on the bottom of it, and it's going to travel across the sky. Yeah, just like the sun does. And this boat over here was signified in their scripts to have been made of iron. From the womb of Nut comes metal of the gods. You ever heard the Judas Priest old song, Metal Gods? And then while I was hearing that, everybody was thinking, oh, these are the gods of heavy metal music, and I was thinking about ancient gods they used to make out of metal and sacrifice to and all kinds of weird things. And you look at something like this and you can get a different idea. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy, guys. And hit that ring bell, because apparently due to the numbers, people aren't getting their notifications. Peace.